Hey everybody, welcome to PC Perspective. I'm Ryan Shrout. Today we're here to look at the brand new Corsair Graphite Series 380T case. You can see here it's a very bright yellow color, which is new from the company. I actually kind of really like the design. It's available in yellow and white and black, so you've got options there. It is a Mini-ITX case. So look at Mini-ITX motherboard, but you can get support for full-size graphics cards, full-size power supply, SSDs, hard drives, and it's got some other really neat features included as well. Let's take a look. The front of the case starts with a mesh wire front panel that I actually like a lot. Like a lot of Corsair cases, it just has a pop-out form factor there. It is a kind of a fine mesh here, so it is completely cleanable. It's basically like a filtered fan intake. They do include a single 140 millimeter fan here. It does have a white LED. It depends on the color case you get, what color LED fan you get. You can fit two 120s if you want to, but I don't really see any space for a radiator with that. So you're just looking at front air intake there. If you look at the top here, you actually see you've got our power button in the middle. We have two USB 3.0 port connections right there. We've got our audio input and output. You've got your LED for hard drive access. You have a 3-option fan speed controller, so you've got 3 speed settings there. And you got your reset button on this side. I will say that the reset button is unusually large and easily accessible. So if you have kids or animals that may paw around on stuff, keep that in mind, or even if you're kind of fiddling around with the dark, the power button and the reset button kind of feel exactly alike. We have a couple of feet on the bottom here that help maintain a little bit of distance between the surface and the bottom of the case. Good for that air filter that you can see on the bottom. And as you can tell, I'm holding it by this nifty handle right here. This is I would say a very LAN party friendly case. It has a handle. They say it's reinforced through the structure of the 380T, so you can see you can lift it and move it around and shake it. And I tried to break it a couple times and was unsuccessful, so that's good. On each side, you have 2 doors that have kind of a clear, smoky, kind of dark tinted acrylic up top, and then you have this filter part here. Again, more mesh for input there. The door just comes off completely, and you can see again this is something that can be vacuumed and cleaned for air intake concerns. On the back, you can see all of our components. You've got a 120 millimeter fan up top for exhaust. We've got our Mini-ITX motherboard here, and underneath that, room for a full-size ATX power supply. And you can see we have our single 2-slot graphics card installed as well. That's pretty much all of the space you have there. If you look on the back, we've got another one of those same doors that is completely cleanable. And inside there, you can kind of see sort of the power supply mounts. We'll talk about some of the installation questions and issues we had, although most of the time it was really good. And we've got our CPU cooler, and you can see some of our hardware in there. So let's go ahead and take off both of these doors, set them to the side, and show you kind of what everything looks like internally. Obviously, it's a Mini-ITX case, so working in it's going to be more complicated than any other cases. It's going to be crowded. Not a lot of room for fancy cable work or anything, right? You need to be careful about what you're doing. You can see here we've got a GTX 770, a pretty large MSI version we put in here that matches the color scheme pretty well, so we wanted to include that there. The method for installation is pretty nice. If I unscrew one thumb screw on the back, you'll see that there is a bracket right here that really just slides up, and that's what releases the graphics card retention. You can see it slides up and down right there. Then what we'll go ahead and do so that we can see more of the components inside, let's go ahead and take out the video card. Set that to the side. Now you get a better idea of what we're working at or looking at in terms of space. Mini-ITX motherboard, you've got a decent amount of open area here between the edge of the motherboard and kind of where the structure of the case is and that first fan. At the bottom, here are 2 toolless 2.5-inch SSD or 2.5-inch hard drive mount locations. You've got your power supply here, and then you can see you've got kind of a jumble of cables included there. Now what can go there, or what should be able to be in there, is this. This is a 2-tray, 2.5 or 3.5-inch hard drive bay that would normally fit kind of right in that location, actually like that. But because of the size of the power supply we use, it might be a little bit hard to see in the video, we'll have some closer up shots. The edge of the power supply and the connectors and kind of bundles of cables that are attached to it, even though we're using a modular cable or power supply, it kind of gets in the way there. That made it very, very tight in terms of amount of space you would have. And again, it's a Mini-ITX build, so we kind of expect that. But this was, I think, maybe a little bit on the extreme side. If you had a shorter power supply, if you had maybe another inch or 2 inch shorter power supply, you wouldn't run into any of these issues. So keep that in mind when you are picking out components for this. I will also say that there's a piece of metal here that kind of is attached to the tray that the motherboard sits on, and there aren't any holes in that, which I find a little bit surprising based on Corsair's heritage, that there's no way to kind of pass your power cables or SATA cables up through that, and instead you kind of either have to wrap around this angled part on this side, a little bit easier to see there, or you can do the same thing on this side. There's another angled portion behind here, but you can see what we also were able to fit inside the 380T is, this is a Corsair H80 water cooler. It's a 120 millimeter radiator, but it is a double thick radiator. You can see a little bit, maybe if we go to the angle that side. Unlike the 280T that we looked at recently that was a micro ATX case, it really, in reality, wasn't that much larger than this. You had kind of like a rail system here, and you could kind of slide and move the cooler anywhere you wanted. This is kind of a fixed location, so this is definitely where this goes. You have room to install a 240 millimeter radiator if you want. You obviously will only be able to do a single thickness radiator in that case, but the problem we had is that this double thickness radiator basically kind of cuts off the capability underneath it to run cables through. So we weren't able to take power supply cables from the power supply here and kind of run it up this side. That's why we had to merge everything through one area here. Still, it's easy. It's nice to see that we were able to get a large water cooler in here, an H80 double thickness. You could still do a 240. We do have some, like I said, some issues with the cable routing and whatnot. But once you get everything installed, you've got your motherboard. You can obviously put in a Z97. You can put in a Z87 or any of the AMD platforms. You've got room for a full size, pretty long length graphics card. We weren't able to fit in a 295X2, but I think that's a pretty extreme case in reality. Overall, I think the design of the 380T is pretty good. I like it. I like the aesthetics of it. I like the kind of the new industrial design that they're going with it. There are a couple little quirks in terms of where the cables went and everything, but I think overall, as long as you're careful with a couple of specific component selections, the 380T has a lot to offer. Now, one other cool feature that I forgot to mention while we're looking on the inside is that this case basically has dome lights inside. There's a switch inside this door here that you can actually flip, and it actually lights up the interior pointing down at the motherboard and components. It actually looks pretty cool, and when you're working on it, that could be useful, except for the fact that it has to be plugged in and it has to be turned on for that light to work. And when you have a full-size discrete graphics card installed in it, it kind of blocks the vision of the rest of the components from this little side portion of the case. So in my opinion, it's a really, really cool idea that needs refinement in terms of having like a selectable on-off interior light switch built into the case. Pricing-wise, you're looking at anywhere from $129 to $149 depending on the colors that you look at. White and yellow are a little bit more expensive than the plain black design. The black version has red LEDs in terms of the fans and the lights up top. Yellow and white have white LEDs. So if that concerns you, keep that in mind as well. It is available now, and it's cool to see Corsair kind of branch out, try something a little bit different. Mini-ITX designs always have issues, right? There's always going to be positives and there's always going to be negatives with Mini-ITX designs because you're restricting space in a pretty significant way. So I still think this case is worth a look if you are comfortable with the couple of restrictions that we mentioned earlier in the video. And if you want to see more, check out the full review with a lot more pictures and descriptions at pcper.com. Thanks, guys.